You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and it's great to be with you as always because we're about to talk about how to build and grow and monetize your online platform, or as we sometimes say, we're going to teach you how to take your passion, turn it into a platform that becomes your paycheck. And we're really excited to be able to do that. This week, we're going to be talking about why and how to set short term goals. I don't know if this is something that you've thought about, but I'm going to tell you that this is an approach that I find helpful when I'm trying to reduce stress as I build my online platform. So I've got a few suggestions for us. We're going to talk about the why and the how of setting short-term goals. Before we get into that, just want to give a quick plug for platformlaunchers.com. Stop over at the website. You'll find a whole bunch of stuff that'll help you as you build, grow, and monetize your online platform. And as always, just want to invite you to consider our members club. We love inviting new members in, and we work on building these platforms together, and you get to do so with a really fun group. So if that's something that you think would benefit you, be sure to check out the membership page at platformlaunchers.com. Now, a little background on this year. You've heard me talk about this some, but this year was a little bit of a unique year for me, although I guess most of us would probably look at our lives and say, isn't every year kind of unique? Guess they all are. But as you probably heard me mention several times here on the podcast, I made the decision to start teaching again this past year, years ago. So from 2012 to 2018, I taught at Cairn University. I loved it. And this past year, so in the fall of 2023, so a little less than a year ago, I decided to step back into doing that again and really enjoyed it. The fall semester, have to admit, it involved a lot of work. The spring semester did as well, especially the first time you're prepping certain classes. Once you have a class prepped, you're just refining it. But when you're prepping something from scratch, lots and lots of extra work, takes a lot of extra time. I didn't mind it, but definitely involved. But while I was prepping and while I was teaching my classes this school year, one thing I noticed that I did not have a lot of time for was time to work on some of the additional projects that I had in mind to do for my online platform. I had certain goals and certain things that I thought that I was going to accomplish during this past year, but once I decided to get involved in teaching, there's only so many hours in a day, and basically some of those things I had to say, I'll get to those, but it can't be for now. So, for instance, I'll give you a few examples. There are several courses and several books in the pipeline. So I've got them essentially ready to go, but they're not fully prepped. But several books, several courses in the pipeline. And I'd like to get those 100% finished now so I could release them. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know what? I think now is going to be the perfect time for me to make them available because right now, having just completed the spring semester, I am in the midst of a several month window where things have slowed down academically. And if I make really good use of my time, I think I'm going to be able to release this content. I need to get it done over the summer if I'm going to do it, but I think this would be the perfect time to do this. So, to help me get this done, because this is a goal, I'm setting a series of short term goals. I have quite a few long-term goals as well, but in the midst of this brief window, like I just described it, these summer months here, this available time that I'm not going to have once the fall comes back around, I have several short-term goals in place, and I think having them in place is about to serve me very well. So I'm going to tell you really quickly how I'm setting this up for me, then I'm going to give you the why I think you should set up some short-term goals, and then I'm going to give you a metric that I think can help with this. But here's how I'm setting this up. Right now, as I speak to you, I have approximately 4 months to accomplish the things that are on my task list. And so my master list, I have a master list of these things that I desire to work on and desire to finish up. That list contains everything I want to get done during this 4 month stretch. It's got the whole thing. And from there, I have one project marked off that's going to take me 2 months. So I know that project in and of itself is a 2 month project. Not a problem because I've got a 4 month window. But then I have several other projects that I look at and I think, all right, that project will probably require less than a week to do. And some of the things on my project list will only require maybe part of a day to do. And if I stick to this schedule where I'm looking at the master list, 4 months, 2 months, 1 week, 1 day, that sort of thing. If I stick to that schedule and if I complete these short-term content creation goals, here's what I have expected in my mind at this point to have completed before next semester begins. I think I'm going to succeed at getting 3 new courses completely recorded and edited. I think I'm going to get at least 2 books published, and I think I'm going to make some new investments in my own personal growth of some things that I'd like to be doing that I think will be helpful in that respect. And then there are some revisions that I'd like to make to my platform and my pricing structures and things like that. I want to get those in place, get those ready to go. So those are kind of my overarching goals that I'd like to get squared away during this 4-month period of time. And I recognize that probably sounds like a lot, and maybe it is, but I'll be honest with you, I don't feel overwhelmed by it. I look at that list and I feel very comfortable with that list, and I'm fairly confident that I'm going to be able to get this all done because I'm taking it 1 week at a time. I don't have to worry about next week's tasks. I just need to focus on completing this week's work. That's it. And if I maintain that attitude and if I stick to that schedule, I think I'm going to be very happy with what I accomplish. But I'm mentioning this to you because I'd like for you, as you think about what you're working on and your platform and the things that you'd like to develop, I'd like to encourage you to set a series of short term goals as well. Because I think overwhelm is one of the major causes of stagnation in online platform development. When I coach people, and I was doing some coaching it's Tuesday evening as I record this, but I was doing some coaching already this week, and in fact yesterday I was doing some coaching, and I notice this is a theme when I'm coaching people. When I coach people who are building their platforms, the topic of overwhelm is a topic that frequently comes to the surface because people have so many things in mind. We have so many things that we dream about having in place when it comes to our online platforms. But the process of building it sometimes feels so overwhelming. So instead of making progress, something that I've noticed tends to happen quite a bit is we as human beings tend to give into our stress and then we retreat. So instead of getting these things accomplished, we let overwhelm take over our mind, and then before that 4-month stretch of time or however much time you have, it gets eaten up, and we get to the end of that period of time. We look at it, we say, you know what, I didn't get as much done as I hoped to get done because I was feeling so overwhelmed. And if you can identify with this struggle, what I'd like to encourage you to do is to replace your sense of overwhelm with a series of short term goals. And what I'd like to encourage you to do is to just break your long term ambitions into achievable weekly chunks. So think about them from a weekly standpoint, not a many month standpoint. Just think about, what do I want to accomplish this week? And as you're doing that, don't let yourself really even think about next week's work. Don't worry about next week's work. Just focus on the tasks that are important for you to get accomplished this week. Focus on what you need to do today, focus on what you need to do this week, but don't worry about next week's work. And once you finish this week's tasks, let yourself understand that you're just done. You're done. Finish this week's tasks and then be done. Next week's work does not need to be touched until next week. Just focus on this week's work. Now, I guess if you get it so inspired, you can work ahead if you feel like it, but don't tell yourself that you have to. And it might even be best to just kind of set that hard parameter and say, once I finish this week's work, I'm not even going to touch next week's work. I'm only going to focus on this week's work no matter what. I actually think following this approach helps us get things done much more quickly. I know it certainly helps me. I'm convinced it can help you. And I think there's a few psychological reasons why setting short term goals works. I actually noticed that the people in my life that tend to be the most productive are people that get good at setting some of these short term goals. I think when you set short term goals, so let me talk about the psychology. This is the why of why we should set up some short term goals. And then I'm going to give you some more how in just a moment here. But I think this is why psychologically this works. I think when we set up short term goals, those short term goals, they actually provide clarity and direction by breaking down larger objectives into manageable tasks. I think overwhelm comes when we try and take on things that just don't feel manageable because they're so big. And when we have this clarity and direction, because we've now broken down bigger things into smaller things, it actually helps us stay focused on what needs to be accomplished in the immediate future, not the eventual future, the immediate future. I also think achieving short term goals provides a sense of accomplishment that leads to motivation. And when we have that motivation, that keeps us progressing toward larger aspirations, whatever those larger aspirations happen to be. And I think each small success, every time we have just one taste of success, one small success, it ends up leading to confidence. And then that confidence leads to momentum. And so you get that sense of accomplishment when you start breaking things down into short term goals, and it leads to motivation and momentum as we progress forward. Think something else that it would be a psychological benefit of setting short-term goals, but short-term goals, what they do is they serve as milestones that help us track our progress. They actually enable us to assess how far we've come and allow us to make adjustments if necessary. But short-term goals are like just they're like milestones. You look at it and you're able to say, you get that good feeling that you've accomplished something. I don't know if you do this. Maybe this will be weird to admit that I do this, but I like to make checklists of all sorts of things that I'm doing. And sometimes I'll put things on the checklist that I've already done during the day just because I like to actually see it get checked off, even though it's already done. Sometimes I'll add something else to the checklist that I've already accomplished just because it contributes to the motivation that comes from achieving a milestone. And short-term goals have that capacity to serve like milestones that allow you to track progress, and it leads to momentum. I also think short-term goals, one of the other psychological benefits of setting them is that they allow for flexibility and they allow for adaptability more so than long-term goals. It's good to have long-term goals as well, but the short-term ones allow for more flexibility and adaptability. You could adjust your approach, you could adjust your priorities based on changing circumstances without losing sight of the bigger picture. And so these are some of the psychological benefits that I think come to us when we set some of these short-term goals. But if you're looking at this and you're saying, "All right, I'm convinced. I think short-term goals have value. They are certainly things that I would like to be focused on." But then you're also wondering to yourself, "All right, how do I go about setting up a metric for which these short-term goals are going to be measured? Or what approach should I take? Or is there a blueprint that I could utilize for getting started?" Well, I want to suggest a blueprint for you. This is an approach I would recommend if I was really wrestling with this idea of setting some short-term goals. These are some of the things that I've kind of noticed that I do that help me with my short-term goal setting. The first one is this. I'm actually going to give you six things here. Six things that I think are part of an effective blueprint for setting up some short-term goals. The first one is very obvious, very simple. Just start off by identifying your priorities. And what you want to do is you want to determine what's most important to you right now and what you want to achieve in the near future. And so what you want to do is you want to focus on goals that align with your values, your priorities, your long-term objectives, but you're going to identify some priorities that are more important in the right now and in the near future than some of the long-term ones. They're going to fit with the long term, but you want to look at these and say, all right, this is a priority for right now. This is a priority for this week, or this is a priority for this month. Just start with identifying the priorities. Second thing I would encourage you to do is to be specific. So start with identifying the priorities. Secondly, be specific. Clearly define what you want to accomplish. I think specific goals are easier to work toward. I think they're easier to measure progress than just generalized goals. I think it's wise to avoid vague objectives. And probably the best way you could avoid some vague objectives is to just ask, like, what, why, when, where, how type questions. But I know for me, I'll give you an example of where this became very, very helpful for me. I remember back in 2021 when I was building the Platform Launchers website. And I thought to myself, all right, I want to build this website and I want it to be good and I want it to be practical. And I thought, all right, building a website with as much as I want it to have on it sounds daunting. And so the way I would do it, that one I actually broke down into weekly goals and daily goals. And so I would say, all right, you know what? I'm not going to worry about the courses page today. I'm not going to worry about the membership page. I'm not going to worry about the bookstore page. Nothing like that. All I'm going to do today is just focus on the home page. That's it. I just want the home page to look exactly like I want it to look. And when I'm done with the homepage, when I've got the elements on there that I think look good, then I'm going to step back and I'm not going to work on the website for the rest of the day. I'm just going to build the homepage. And then the next time I sat down in front of my computer on a different day, I was like, all right, now today I'm going to build the course page. And I would focus on getting the logistics of the course page set up. And so I'd be very specific. So that's what I'm suggesting here is number 2 on the list as far as how to set these goals. You want to be very specific, clearly define what you want to accomplish in this short period of time. Third thing, and this is very related, you'll see how these build on each other. Make your goals measurable. Make it measurable, not general. Make it measurable because measurable goals provide tangible evidence of what you've achieved. And if you have tangible evidence of achieving something, it actually is a form of self accountability that makes you feel like, all right, I'm actually moving in the right direction. So, for example, the example I gave of building the website at the end of the day, because my goal was to build a page, a specific page, at the end of the day, I could just simply say, all right, if I'm making this goal measurable at the end of the day, I could say, did I actually get the page built? And if the page is built, then I could say, all right, great. I got the page built. That's all I had to do today. I just had to build a home page, or I just had to build a course page, or whatever it may be. All right, that's number 3 on the list. Make your goals measurable. Number 4 on the list is this: be realistic. Make sure your goals are actually achievable within the given time frame and with the resources available that you have on hand right now. If you say, all right, this is something I want to get done this week, make sure it's something you can actually get accomplished that week. You want to be realistic with it because setting unrealistic goals, it actually leads to frustration and demotivation. I see some people tell themselves that they're going to get stuff done that's not really realistic as far as getting it done as a short-term goal. So don't tell yourself that your long-term goal has to become a short-term goal. The idea is we're breaking the long-term goal down into weekly chunks that we can get done in a short period of time, a week or less. So be realistic with the time frames that you select. But number 5, and we were talking a little bit about this before we went live here with the podcast. I was talking with our members club about this. Set deadlines. So number 5 on my list is set deadlines. Assign a deadline to every short-term goal. I often say that if it gets on the calendar, it gets done. If it gets on the calendar, it gets done. If you get something written there, you're going to get it accomplished. You need to set a deadline to each short-term goal. And I think what ends up happening, this might have psychological benefit as well, but a time frame, it ends up creating a sense of urgency that actually helps us prioritize the tasks that we're working on. So you want to, again, make sure your deadlines are realistic and achievable. Like I said, I frequently say this. My wife hears me say this all the time. If it gets on my calendar, it actually gets done. So set deadlines. I work well with deadlines. Deadlines actually help me get things accomplished. So set some of those deadlines for yourself. And if it helps, make yourself publicly accountable to someone, or you can do what I have for number 6 on my list here of how to set some of these short-term goals. Create a visible checklist. What do I mean by a visible checklist? Well, what I'd encourage you to do is document your goals in a place where you can see them regularly. Some place you can actually see them. So this could be a journal. I know several people in our members club utilize journals to keep track of various things. This could be a digital note. I do this a lot. I put digital notes in my phone and I'll put like checklists so I could cross them off on the phone. I like that a lot. I know some people utilize, someone was just showing me recently a vision board that they had set up as far as things that they wanted to accomplish, and they had that down. And I thought, yeah, if that works for you, that's a good idea. But writing down your goals, it increases commitment and it serves as a constant reminder of what you're working towards. I could tell you one that from 2018 to 2021, one of my big goals during that 3-year stretch was paying off our mortgage. And when we'd had the mortgage for a while, and we decided, hey, you know what, in the next 3 years here, let's get this thing paid off. And anytime if I even put just $5 extra toward the mortgage, I put it down in this digital note where I kept track of everything. And it became a visible checklist for me that I think helped us accomplish paying off the mortgage a little bit quicker. And so I think that that works the same when it comes to online platform development or any goal that we're trying to accomplish. Create a visible checklist. It puts it right in front of your face and actually helps you get it done. I don't know if you're feeling stagnated right now, or if you feel like you have a whole series of projects on your list that you'd love to see accomplished someday, but just feels like they're just kind of lingering out there. If that's the case, if you're feeling stagnated, it may be because you're overwhelmed. If you have a long list of unfinished product or projects, I should say, it may be because you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and you're setting these long-term goals, but not really the steps that lead to actually accomplishing them. I would encourage you to transition that into these 1 week goals. Just take a chunk of it that can be done in a week and let yourself say, all right, this is what I'm going to do this week. I'm not going to do any more. I'm just going to get this accomplished. And if you do that, I think sometimes it helps to actually get things done that way. I know it certainly helps me. I'd encourage you to give this approach a try. What it does is it frees my mind from trying to worry about the things that are more distant goals. It lets me feel like I'm actually accomplishing something meaningful in the moment, setting short-term goals, celebrating their completion 1 week at a time, not worrying about what I need to do next week, just focusing on this week's task, telling myself I only need to do this week's tasks. The other tasks essentially don't exist. And then when those tasks are complete, taking the rest of the week off to rest from even thinking about it, it helps me prep for the next week of tasks. That is an approach that has worked well for me for years. I thoroughly want to endorse that and recommend that to you, especially if you've been feeling stressed or overwhelmed with what you're trying to build. Setting some of these short-term goals can be a helpful approach to actually getting these things done. Before we finish up here, I just want to again thank you for joining us here on the podcast. It's always great to have you with us. And I want to let you know we've got a lot of fun stuff over at platformlaunchers.com and our members club. You could try it out for 2 weeks, jump on these calls with us, interact with our Q&A time, and check out our vault of previous training content. We'd love to share that with you as well. Again, it's all at platformlaunchers.com. Don't be afraid to stop by. And when you do, say hi. You can shoot me an email, John at platformlaunchers.com. John at platformlaunchers.com. I'd love to hear from you. But that's it for us this week. Thank you again for tuning in as always. I love our time together, and I look forward to catching up together with you right here on this podcast or via YouTube if that's where you're accessing this content. Looking forward to catching up with you again right here next week. Take care.